All right, welcome back, everyone. Last but not least, we have got James Barker. He is a psychic skeptic who has a passion for research and writing. Since 2010, he has been researching the paranormal while also documenting his entry in 2007 to the Australian Skeptics $100,000 challenge. This challenge is for everyone or anyone with supernatural powers to prove it to the skeptics. James did, but they did not pay him any money. Instead, they labeled the 7 and only 7 precognitive dreams he sent them over 8 months as coincidences, even though they all came true. So I'm really looking forward to James's speech, challenging the skeptics. Take it away, James.
Hello, thank you. And I guess, as you can tell, it is a subject I'm very passionate about. I'd first of all like to thank Lance, and I'd like to thank Joyce, and also Parapsychology Australia for giving me this opportunity. And I think it's brilliant that we have an organisation such as this in Australia that's willing to look outside of the normal boundaries. I call myself a psychic skeptic. Psychic because ever since I've known, I've always had dreams that have come true. When I was young, I'd dream of what was going to happen at school the next day, and it would, and I just thought this was the norm. I thought everyone had this happen. As I got older, the dreams became less frequent, and now I've got a couple of chronic illnesses, and as a result, I don't sleep very well, and the dreams are very rare. I've also seen ghosts, but only when I'm asleep or in that twilight between sleeping and waking. I don't see dead people. I've had many out-of-body experiences, and I've also got a finely tuned sixth sense, but I cannot control that sixth sense. And I'd just like to tell a little story about that. And when I was in the army in 1978, I was a signalman, and it was in Brisbane, and we were shift workers. It was around midnight, and we'd come off work and we went to Enoggera Barracks, which is one of the biggest barracks in Australia. And we were watching in one of our rooms, we were watching television, and it was quite loud. And all of a sudden I could hear someone calling for help. No one else in the room could, and we turned the television down and there was just silence. We turned the television back up, and again we could hear someone calling for help. We turned the television down, silence. The guys thought I was joking. We turned the television back up. Again, I could hear someone calling for help. The guys wouldn't believe me, so I set off on my own and went outside the barracks, and it was night time. There's all these buildings around. I went into the dark, and around 200 meters away, I discovered a guy on his back. He was just wearing jocks, and he'd been mugged and he couldn't move. And this was very, very rare. I'd never ever heard of anyone being mugged in an army barracks. So I raced over to the infantry guard post and I said, "We've got a guy, he's injured, he can't move. We need an ambulance, we need blankets." The corporal didn't believe me. No one gets mugged in an army barracks. So he said, "Show me." So I took him to where the guy was, and the first thing he said was, "Quick, get an ambulance and get a blanket." And they reckon that I probably saved the guy's life because he would have died of exposure, because no one would have found him. 2 weeks later, I got a visit from the military police, and they wanted to know out of the thousands of people in that barracks, excuse me, I was the only one that had heard his cries for help. And then when they saw where my barracks room was and the distance, again, they could not work out how I had heard him. And in the end, I just said, well, I must have good hearing, and we dismissed it at that. And I think that happens a lot in life. We have these intuitive sixth sense moments and they're dismissed. It's something we don't really go into and we just fob it off. And I've found this in a lot of the books I read as well. Had one other occasion of something similar. And again, it was when I first joined the army, and I was walking around at 3 a.m. in the morning around this huge building, and it was cold, and I had my rifle over my shoulder, grey coat on, and I was in a meditative state because you're just plodding along. And the next minute I could sense someone was behind me. Just like smell, hearing, eyesight, I knew there was someone behind me, and I turned, and a few hundred meters behind me down the hill, the wind was blowing with me, so I couldn't have heard him. There was a man checking some instruments at a building, and I raced down there, and it was our duty corporal, and he couldn't work out how I knew he was there. He was checking the fridge instruments. And again, I just said, well, I knew you were there, and we dismissed it and we left it at that. I'm also a skeptic. Most skeptics, though, search for evidence that the paranormal can't happen. I'm passionate about searching for evidence that it can. So when I bring up examples like Jimmy Carter or the other president, it's because I'm passionate. I want to share the fact that, hey, I found some evidence. I've written 2 books that will never be bestsellers. This is because skeptics will never believe I'm psychic. And I call people that carry out psychic readings and take money for it, I call them psychic performers. That's my term. I think psychic performers just won't like my conclusions. And I think that we should always, probably like a lot of people here, be able to find evidence. So if someone's saying they can talk to the dead or they can see angels or fairies, whatever, then there should be some evidence that they can provide to show that. And in the last 12 years, while I've been investigating and searching, the only thing that I've been able to find solid evidence for is ESP and precognitive dreams. And I've found substantial evidence of this. And what I've done is as I'll relate, after this experience with the skeptics, I decided to search and try and delineate, okay, in the paranormal, what's real, what isn't. And this is my opinion, and I understand that, and we all have opinions. And I set out what my opinion is based on. So I discuss facts as ghosts, and I believe we all see ghosts every day. And I'm talking about the ghosts that are on television, because they're images of a lot of the 1920s movies, they're images of dead people. They actually fit the classification of a ghost. I also cover reincarnation, out-of-body experiences, NDEs, etc., especially precognitive dreams, providing many examples. And I started a chapter on psychic performers, and that chapter just grew and grew and grew, and it grew into its own book. And that book is called Rating Psychic Performers. And in this book, I actually show you how you can carry out a psychic reading. And the good news is you don't have to be psychic to do so. And I rate some of the world's most famous psychic performers. And I've gone through thousands of their questions and statements meticulously, rating each one. And the highest accuracy rating I could find, and again, based on my opinion, out of the Teresa Caputo's, Alison Dubois, John Edward, the highest accuracy average rating I could get was 2%. Now, before going into precognitive dreams, I'd like to talk about death messages. We've already been discussing, Douglas talked about telepathy, and similar with death messages, the knowledge that a relative who is not physically present has just unexpectedly died. There are many examples of these. My partner has seen it happen many times. Dr. Schwartz documents it in his book, The Afterlife Experiments. Dr. Gordian Fould was the 2016 Senior Australian of the Year. He's an emergency medicine specialist. He's very well regarded. He believes in death messages. He has stated that it is a kind of telepathy and that some people have it and some don't. Where am I going with this? Because just as in telepathy and death messages, which there is so much evidence for, they make up the components of a precognitive dreams. We have a transmitter. This is someone that's having a traumatic event. They could be being blown up, shot at. This is why a lot of the military history books I read, I see a lot of these documented events. It could also be where someone's so excited, they have this dream and it's sent out there into the universe. And an example of this is when I had a dream of 3 horses crossing a race line. Now, when I woke up, I could not remember the name of those horses. I could only remember the name of the second horse. And so obviously this person had been really excited that they were winning and they transmitted these horses to me. That morning, I was staying at my parents' at the time. I was searching through the newspaper, looking for names of horses, and Mum came through and she said, "Oh, have you had a dream, have you?" And I said, "Yeah, I saw a horse and it came second." And she said, "Well, put a bet on a win and a place." And I said, "No, Mum, it's going to come second." So I found the name of the horse. I went to the TAB. I had to have help because I'm not into betting, and we only placed a small bet. That afternoon, Mum and I were listening to the radio and that horse came second and we won. And then we heard that a protest had been lodged, and I said to Mum, "I didn't dream about that, and this is why I never, ever bet big on my dreams, because you never know what's going to happen." So the 3 components, you've got the transmitter, the receiver, and the bit I do not understand and I cannot explain, the message comes from the future. There is a big difference between precognitive dreams and normal dreams. The sleep state is normally a light sleep unless it's a very deep, very intense, nasty dream. Then I find it breaks through no matter what. It's very, very vivid. It's like you're watching through somebody else's eyes. You're not involved in it. And it can be very emotional. You could wake up crying. You can wake up shaking. You could wake up laughing. And as I've said, it's from the future. There is so much evidence about precognitive dreams. Major Claude Wallace, he was on the Somme in World War I, and he kept having premonitions of a great naval battle. And he ended up going to his commanding officer and he got permission to go to the British fleet at Scapa Flow. Now, at this stage in World War I, the 2 fleets had not met. The British stayed at the north of England in Scapa Flow, and their task was to stop the German fleet from coming out. And if the German fleet came out, the British fleet would come out and the Germans would retreat. And that was what was happening. So Wallace got permission, but he didn't go. He waited until the premonitions intensified. And when they did, he finally left. And on his way over to Scapa Flow, he stopped at a coastal village in France and he met 3 senior officers and he told them about his premonition. So he got these 3 senior witnesses. He arrived at Scapa Flow on the day the fleet was sailing. And the captain of the battleship that he was getting on, and I'm paraphrasing here, said, "Well, Wallace, I hope you're going to bring us luck, because every time we've gone out, the Germans just run away." Well, fortunately or unfortunately for that captain, they sailed that day and the Battle of Jutland took place. It was the largest naval battle of World War I and probably up to then. It was the first time the two main fleets had ever met, and Wallace was the only soldier at the battle. He was in a mainmast taking notes. He's actually recorded as being on the crew for that battleship during that battle. That, along with other evidence, you've got the high-ranking witnesses, there are current newspaper articles that talk about it. He wrote a book about it. He has never been discredited. Winston Churchill, only recently diaries were found which showed that he had a dream that he was going to protect England. He was always seen to be, he thought that he was a man of destiny. Was this dream the reason for this? Is this why he was so brave when he was younger? Because he thought, I'm going to save England, I can't be killed. I don't know. Then there is Christopher Robinson. He is remarkable with his precognitive dreams. I didn't document it here, but he dreamt of coronavirus a year before it happened. He's been helping the UK police. Dr. Gary Schwartz carried out the Arizona experiments with him, where he would dream the night before. The next day, they would go out to a randomized location, and it would turn out to be exactly as Robinson had dreamt it the night before. He's recorded as dreaming of the IRA bombing a bank before it happened. He's recorded air crashes, and an interesting one, he had a dream about the IRA bombing the RAF base at Stanmore. He was so worried that he went to the RAF base. He almost got arrested. And as a result of his visit, they raised the security. There's actually a documentary on the internet about this. And 2 weeks later, the RAF police discovered a car with a bomb in it. And as you can see in the document, he put the bomb, Stanmore RAF, next to a photo equipment. The bomb was found next to a photo equipment building. He also dreamt about 9/11. He saw a plane flying into two buildings, but again, it's quite vague. After the fact, we can see that it was quite accurate. So I've talked about the differences, how different precognitive dreams, sleep state, vivid, through others' eyes, not involved. And then earlier this year, I had a dream. The sleep state was pretty much how it should be. It wasn't vivid. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't through others' eyes. I was involved in it. It seemed like a normal dream. So I didn't post about it. I've got a Facebook page where I post all my dreams now. But this one, I thought, my family's involved. My mum was in the back. She told me about all the sevens. She said 3 sevens. And I thought, I'm not going to post about this, but I'm going to tell my sister, because I think it's to do with lotto. And I'm going to buy a lotto ticket, and I'm going to put all the sevens in there. My sister bought a lotto ticket. She got all the sevens. Her daughter bought a lotto ticket. And then, as you can tell from now, my memory's terrible due to the painkillers I'm on, and I promptly forgot about it. Then that night, my sister rang me and she said, "Oh, geez, you're good, James." I said, "Why?" And she said, all the 3 sevens, they came up in the lotto tonight, 7, 27 and 37. And I tried all the combinations when I did my ticket, but I didn't realise that you only needed 3 numbers to win. Otherwise, I probably would have bet bigger. So we all won a little bit of money. But this dream raised some questions to me. Was it my dead mother visiting me? How can a dead person see into the future? Did my mind use my mum as a symbol to provide the information? If it was my mother, why didn't she give me all the numbers? Why didn't she repeat the message each night? Although I know that I have to be in the right sleep state, so that's probably why. And Mum, please tell me more numbers. And this one I'd like to share with you, but I'd also like to warn you, please don't buy any Sabre shares. While preparing this slideshow, I was thinking quite a lot about precognitive dreams. So Friday, October the 7th, I tried to will myself to dream of the share market again. And I saw all these 3-letter codes and I woke up, but I couldn't remember any of them. And I got back to sleep, and next minute I'm having this convoluted dream in Hong Kong, British Army, and then they're leaving Hong Kong, and I hop on the back of a truck, and there are two really pale white men on the top of the cabin of the truck, not actually in the tray. And then I got a close-up of the mouth of one of the men, and he said the word saber. And I woke up and I emailed myself the word saber. Now, I'm hoping that this dream was about the share market, and not about the two pale white men on the back of the truck. So I then looked up the ASX, and yes, there was a share called Sabre. On Friday, when the market was down, it was up 25%, but my dream had no pricing or timeline. I've only had two other share dreams, and both times they gave me a price, and both times that price came true. So had I missed it, would it go up Monday, the next week? But it was such a strong vision of this word saber, I think it's going to resolve itself in months. It was trading at 0.007, and I thought, do I buy straight away? I ended up, I'm not a rich person. I've got a super fund, self-managed super fund. And so I got up really early. I watched Sabre. Sabre went down to 0.006. And so I bought some, and I thought, look, every other time I haven't gambled big. This time I'm going to gamble big, relatively speaking, for me. And I bought at 006. A week later, they went down to 005. And so I bought more shares. That's how my confidence is. And November 1, they dropped to 004. And as of now, they then rose to 0.005, and they've gone back to 004. I am still fairly confident because of the strength of my dream. But again, this is my experiment. And please, no one buy Sabre shares, because I'm not that great with shares normally. But I've shared this so you guys can see that this is a dream that hasn't resolved itself. So in a couple of months' time, we can all look back and go, hey, did it work or didn't it? But I don't want you to come along for the ride on that. So now that I've explained the background of precognitive dreams, in January 2006, I had one of my worst ever vivid dreams. It woke me from the deepest dream. I was shaking. I was shivering. I was in a cold sweat. I had to turn the lights on. I couldn't get back to sleep. When I did, I was back there, and I was watching through the eyes of a young girl. It was much younger than my daughter, so I knew it wasn't her. And she was being tortured, and there was a stable-like door. The attacker had a cigarette in his mouth. I would never escape. I was going to die. And I saw there's a building in Perth called King Arthur's Revolving Restaurant. I saw that. So what I thought was, I know it's not my daughter. It was too young. But if a young girl goes missing, then I'm going to tell the police King Arthur's Revolving Restaurant is involved. In June 2006, Dante Arthurs abducted and tortured I think she was 6 years old, in the shopping centre disabled toilets. The doors that I'd seen, excuse me, I didn't expect it to make me so emotional. The doors that I saw, the stable-like door, was because I saw it on the news. The bottom door was all metal, silver, and that's why it looked like the door was in two. So again, it shows the interpretation. It's unknown if Arthur's had a cigarette in his mouth. The little girl, she had her bones broken and she died. And note, the important part of my dream was Arthur's, not Arthur, but it was Arthur's. And unfortunately, my dream was of no help. A few months later, I saw the $100,000 Skeptics challenge, where they said, if you can show that you've got psychic powers come and show us and we'll give you $100,000. I thought it would be of help to the scientific community, that I was going to help the skeptics progress their studying the paranormal. Boy, was I wrong. I told them that occasionally I have a dream which is like watching through one other's eyes, and I see it before it happens. There is no date or time stamp. The stronger or more distressing the image, the further into the future it is. I told him about Dante Arthurs, and I said, although luckily these are extremely rare, all I can do is tell you what I see. And I guess that is one of the big issues. The police will tell you that if you've got 5 witnesses at a murder scene, every one of those witnesses will give you a different story. The same is with precognitive dreaming. We tend to interpret what we see. And what I learnt along this journey was that I wasn't telling them what I was seeing. A lot of it was my interpretation, as we will see. So this was a really brave step for me to take, because I'm a very private person. I contacted and was put in touch with Dr. John Haps, president of the WA group. However, nothing formal was set up. I got the feeling that Dr. Haps was like a gatekeeper. It was like he was holding me back, in my opinion, and didn't really want to go into it in too much depth, because nothing formal was ever set up, even though I kept asking. And also, by me asking to be a challenger, according to their rules, it was supposed to be covered in their media. They even state that whether you win or lose, they will publish it in their media. So I ended up asking Dr. Storm, and thankfully he accepted to be a third-party witness. Luckily then, October, which seems to be a good month for my dreams, I had my first dream. And this is when I saw the leader of the opposition's wife, I didn't know her name, standing next to a hole which I thought was a grave. But again, I stuffed up, because I interpreted it and said, I saw Kevin Rudd's wife, and I think she might have died. I think it's an exaggeration. Maybe she was just injured. I saw a hole in the ground, so hopefully she just falls and trips in it and isn't hurt too bad, and it isn't a grave. And my partner said to me, look, you've just said it isn't a grave. And I said, no, that's not what I meant. I said, I hope it isn't a grave. So a bit of semantics there. The result, when I'd had this dream, no Australian soldiers had been killed in Afghanistan for nearly 5 years. So a week after my dream, we had our first death in Afghanistan. I'd never, ever dreamt of Theresa Rain. I'd never seen her at a funeral in real life or any other dreams. The SAS trooper that died weeks after my dream was buried, not cremated, in Perth. And then Sky News, as part of their news promotion, ran a video clip of Theresa Rain at the funeral standing next to the grave. And I got to see this almost every day for the next month or so. The skeptics, they said it's a coincidence. And now I'd like to fast forward to my 7th dream, because I think my first and the following are my stronger ones. This is one, and I'm not going to go through all my dreams, but the 7th is my weakest. And so that's why I'd like to show this one. And this is where I said that I dreamt of a dead Aboriginal man, and we'll see this was the mask I'd seen. A lot of blood coming from his head. He was lying on a wooden pier. The main concern was that it was the picture of a body was being broadcast on the news, which was against Aboriginal culture. Now, I've been to Arnhem Land, I've been to sacred sites, and what I was doing here was projecting my own interpretation. What I should have said was I saw the face, I saw the blood, I saw a wooden pier, and that's it. My concern was that I was watching it on the news, and that's what I should have left out. But it's all part of the learning. And again, as I say, this was one of my weakest dreams. To the next day, a man tried to murder his ex-girlfriend at the Star Casino in Sydney, next to the pier. And the skeptics called it a coincidence. And okay, I won't argue with this one. Dream 2. My second dream to the skeptics. I dreamt that I was going downhill and this truck, I saw the front of the truck coming towards me, and I saw a baby in a blanket crossing the street. And there were 2 mothers involved. And again, I stuffed up here because I sabotaged this because I didn't tell them that everybody involved in this dream was Aboriginal. But the Friday before at work, a workmate who was working in the same office told me how he had seen these 2 Aboriginal kids at 2 a.m. in the morning. He said they were 7 years old, and he thought it was outrageous that they were out at 2 a.m. in the morning. And I thought I'd transposed what he'd said onto my dream, so I didn't pass this on to the skeptics. Missing babies are very rare. It's very rare that we have these. Cleo Smith's abduction in 2021 made world headlines. Can we say that in the next week there is going to be a news headline in Australia or Perth about a baby? And this was only the second time in my life I dreamt of a baby. The first time I dreamt of a baby, I saw these multicoloured liquid going down a baby's throat. And I thought, what am I seeing? The next day we got a telegram, and my wife's niece's baby had accidentally swallowed acid. That was the only other time I dreamt of a baby. This time, 2 days later, an Aboriginal baby was taken from a Perth hospital. It was extremely newsworthy. The baby was in a blanket, but that's expected. The baby was found in a bus going up the hill. Again, I could be drawing a long bow here, I'll accept that. And all parties were Indigenous. Again, skeptics, a coincidence? Okay, not that solid. But now I'd like to tell you about my strangest dream, and this crosses over again a lot of the subjects covered today. My daughter and I, my daughter was, I can't remember, 10-ish around this time. We went on a 5-day cruise of the Malacca Straits. We were lucky enough to have a suite. So she was on the lounge bed next door, but there was no closed off door. I was in the bed, the main bed, but I could not sleep. We'd set off from Singapore the night before, and we were chugging down the Malacca Straits. Around 6 a.m, I drifted off. And straight away, I saw a middle-aged man of similar height standing in the room next to me. And I've never experienced this before. It was like he was in another dimension, and he would always be there. He told me I was the first to see him. I asked his name, and it sounded like Reuben, and that he was a swinger or swimmer. He had an accent. Just then, my daughter woke screaming. She said there was a man in the cabin. It's only recently that I've told her of my dream. I then spent the next days searching on the slow satellite internet, searching on names of Reuben, whatever, trying to find out if someone had died in our cabin. And I sent an email when we got home to the cruise company, to Dr. Haps, to Dr. Storm, providing them this dream. And I said to the cruise line, look, you need to be careful if somebody of that description, but it's a silly, too general, isn't it? Too generic. But I did ask them to be careful if someone went in that room, that they didn't fall overboard. 14 months later, now, just on this, the cruise ship actually moved away from the Malacca Straits for the next year. I think it was the Olympics or something like that. So it only resumed sailing at the Malacca Straits 12 to 14 months later. When it did, the first suspicious death to occur on that ship occurred. An Indian man, similar age to me, no idea, his name wasn't Reuben, and he fell overboard in suspicious circumstances and he drowned. He told me he was a swimmer, or maybe it was a non-swimmer. To put this into perspective, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but we sailed from Singapore overnight, and that box there is where I had the dream, the vivid dream. And that dream, that box, is where he drowned and died. So I would say that was not a coincidence. I got the location, I got his sex right, age, and he was overboard. So I'd say not a coincidence, but the skeptics, of course, said it was. And then I got an email from Dr. Happ saying, just send me some specific predictions with a timeline, nothing vague like an aircraft will crash sometime in the future or a movie star will die. Both are likely to occur, but when? I'd never told him that an aircraft would crash or that a movie star would die. Fortunately, and this is the last dream I'm covering, from work in December, I sent him a dream, and I don't have a copy of this email because after this dream, I went on holidays on the cruise and then I stopped working because of my chronic illness. But I sent him an email of a gunman at the Empire State Building in 2012. And then after him sending me that email, I got a bit annoyed. And I said, look, the only recently dated dream I've had, and I meant the one I'd sent to him from work, is that there will be a major 9/11 type incident in New York in 2012. Is that detailed enough for you, or is that too vague? Can you please let me know? Normally I don't get a time frame. So this was January 2008, I'd sent from home. And searching through my archives, I found the email from Lance when he sent to me in 2010. He said, James, can you include the premonition for 2012, the terrorist attack in New York, probably the Empire State Building? I'd like to get this on record. So yes, I'd informed Lance about this before it happened, years before it had happened. I'd also posted on a website, but as luck would have it, that website crashed. And then in July 2012, I discovered that my nephew was 1 block away from the Empire State Building. In 2007, he was at school in Ocean Reef in Perth. So I was really surprised, but I also knew that him and his dad are skeptics. So I thought I need to put this to him a bit, try to do it carefully. And I said, look, John, because please don't go near the Empire State Building, because 5 years ago I dreamt a terrorist, a single, attacked the Empire State Building in 2012. So please don't visit the building this year. And then I panicked. I thought, what have I done? Have I just put my nephew onto the terrorist list in America? Will the CIA intercept this email and think I'm a terrorist? I couldn't sleep that night. Then in August, a gunman shot and killed a co-worker and was approaching the Empire State Building. 2 anti-terrorist police doing the normal rounds engaged and shot him. 9 were wounded and 2 were killed. It was deemed at first to have been terror related. So we suddenly had all the components that I'd documented. We had a single gunman. It was 2012, Empire State Building. The last shooting at the Empire State Building was 15 years ago. I'd said it was going to be in 2012 by a single gunman. I'd said a terrorist attack, and CNN originally called it a terrorist attack. However, the skeptics labelled it a coincidence. However, and I want to just clarify on this, not so much, I guess I accept that they call it a coincidence because they just ignored me when I told them about this. They didn't respond. So in conclusion, over 8 months, I sent only 7 dreams. One of those, I think, was not that good. And if we look at statistical significance, for example, how likely is it for Theresa Rain to be standing next to a hole in the ground tomorrow, next week, next month, and to keep seeing that on the news? It's very low. So I'll rate that at 90%. Baby in the blanket. And I'm probably giving myself a too high a rating, but we can discuss that. 90%. Man overboard, 90%. Again, extremely low, especially to dream about it in the exact location in the whole world where that happened. The share pricing, I haven't talked about this, but I predicted the price of WAN shares, which at that stage were very, very high. And they dropped to that price. I bought at that price and then sold when they went high. The shooting at the Empire State Building, I give myself 100%. I dreamt of a truck rollover. I was embarrassed to send this to the skeptics. Trucks roll over all the time. But I thought it was so vivid, I need to send it. 2 days later, it happened at my work. I'd been there for 10 years. We'd never had a truck roll over. The murder of the Aboriginal man, me seeing the pier, the blood, the mask, I put that down at 20%. So I'm sitting, I think, around 70%. I think anything over 50 to 60% is hopefully greater than chance. So I would say, I would have thought, I would have hoped I'd proven myself to the skeptics, but I look forward to your opinion. And in conclusion, I have one last prediction, and that is the skeptics will never, ever pay out their $100,000 challenge. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, James. Anyway, and you've got some books, it's available on Amazon?
Yes, that's right.
Yep, okay.
There's
Oops.
the information.
There we go. Yep, I don't have to write it down. All right, thank you so much, James. That was a novel topic. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you. It's been really nice to meet you all.
Yeah, and can we join your Facebook and have a look at your precognition, or is that for family only?
No, that's there is.
So James Barker Research.
I'll see if I can find it and post it in the chat. So I put my dreams and I put the resolution of those dreams in there as well.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap it up, helping us make this conference possible. And thank you especially to the speakers as well. Thank you so much for your time, volunteering your time and your knowledge. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have as well. Say goodbye and for now, and enjoy the rest of your day.